Sometimes when you're in the eye of the storm, it's hard to see those profound behavioral changes coming out of the disruption. Responding at speed can also be a challenge. At Salesforce, we're seeing a lot of leading businesses recognize that to survive a crisis and to grow, you need to put humanity at the center. Truly be customer-centric, personalized, and service-focused. I'm Leandro Perez, Vice President of Marketing for Salesforce Asia Pacific, and I'm excited to be hosting the Salesforce Executive Conversation series, where we talk to Salesforce global executives on their perspectives and experience working with thought leaders across the globe. We've had so many incredible conversations. If you've missed an episode, you can catch up at sfdc.co/conversations. Today, I'm talking with VP and Global Innovation Evangelist Brian Solis, author of 8 best-selling business books, a keynote speaker and digital anthropologist. Brian is all about humanizing technology. For more than 20 years, he's been studying the impact of disruption on businesses, markets and societies, from digital transformation, CX and experience design, to the future of industry trends and human behavior. Welcome to the series, Brian. Great to have you.
It's an absolute pleasure to be here virtually. Next time it'll be in the real world.
I feel like we're right here, Brian. Like, you're in my living room, I'm in your living room. This feels great.
Well, yeah, it actually, I'm very impressed by this whole situation. And I do have to say that I love the room. I love that I am on the big screen there, and maybe all you need is some popcorn, and then we can have at it.
I think our audience is in for a treat. Look, maybe we kick off. We obviously did the bio there, but get a little to know more of Brian. Maybe when you were growing up, what did you think you would be when you were 10 years old?
A digital anthropologist.
Okay.
Yeah, no, not at all. I had 2 things that I wanted to be. One was a computer programmer, and I had already started learning BASIC, and the other was a rock star guitarist.
You know what? I think programmers are the rock stars of today. I don't know. I feel like that's what I like to say.
I think you're right. I think they are. And because we're also doing low code and no code, we have a new generation of rock star non-programmers. Indeed.
Now, I guess a subsequent question to that, did your actual abilities when you were younger match up to either? Were you musically talented? Were you good at programming?
Decent at programming. And I got pretty good at guitar. My mother started me at age 7. She's from Spain, and she wanted me to learn how to play Spanish classical. And ultimately, I gave that a few years until we went right to rock and roll.
I love that. Well, look, you mentioned your mother there. Any lessons from her or any other relatives that sort of you still think about today that really shaped your future?
Every day. I think my mother taught me what it means to be a hard worker, dedicated, and my grandfather on my dad's side really taught me the whole idea of just having a good head on your shoulders, being a good human being, and just overall being kind. He was probably the kindest person I've ever known.
I love that. No, I can definitely relate to that. So tell me, what talent did you wish you had that maybe you don't have today, or when you were growing up you really tried? Maybe it is the guitarist, I don't know, but is there something that you really wished you could have developed?
There were 2. There's one that I actually started developing during COVID. I mean, I've always been an aspiring chef, but during COVID, I really took it up a notch because you couldn't go anywhere and you might as well learn how to cook your favorite meals. And the second, and I've never and will never accomplish this, is to be a good singer.
Well, I think there's a lot of reality TV shows where you could achieve both of those dreams, Brian. I'm just saying.
Certainly.
There's still hope.
Well, with all that free time, might as well.
Look, now bringing it back to a little bit, I guess, of what you do day to day. We obviously talked about digital anthropology. It's a very cool tagline. Is that how you would describe yourself to folks that aren't in the industry? How do you describe what you do every day?
The one that seems to get labeled on me, and I do tend to feed it back when it's appropriate, is futurist. What makes digital anthropology so important is that you spend time understanding how technology impacts any variety of communities or groups so that you can understand how to reverse engineer those observations in any matter of applications. If you want to deliver better customer service for a digital first brain, or if you want to deliver a better commerce experience or service experience for a mobile first brain, and what it is that they value, what it is that they anticipate or expect, what are their norms, what are their beliefs. Those types of things really help to humanize the business, give technology a sense of greater purpose. And so when you I guess explain it like that, people understand, because especially in this era where we're going digital first on everything, full steam ahead, we tend to sort of make digital more about transactions, and we miss that warmth, that ability to use digital to actually develop more powerful, more meaningful relationships. And I know this is probably the antithesis of your question, but having to explain more about what I do and how I tell other people, but the ability then to translate those trends. If we see that people are doing this in a mobile first world or a digital first world, as the world starts opening up, what are the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years going to look like, so that we can start to plan ahead through scenario planning rather than react to the next disruption. And that really sings to the audience.
Sounds like a cool job. And trend translator. I think maybe I'll coin that for you here today, Brian.
I might have to borrow that. And then hashtag it.
Hashtag it for sure. Well, look, you talk a lot, and you mentioned it a little bit there, about customer-centered organizations or customer centricity. What does that mean? Describe it for folks that aren't as familiar, and how would you define it?
I don't really believe that if we were to sit down with any executive at any company and in any industry, if we were to ask them, are you customer centric? I don't think any executive would say, well, Brian, come here, I'm going to tell you a secret. No, we're not customer centric. They all say that they're customer centric, and therein lies the challenge of the definition of what it means. I think it means more of an idea, more of a philosophy, even maybe a marketing tagline. We're customer centric. But if you look at what it really means, which is to have an organization where the customer is at the center of your operations, your decisions, your planning, then we would have to say that most organizations are actually not customer-centered, that data lives in silos, that many functions aren't connected or interconnected, forcing the customer to have disjointed experiences, that many executives making decisions about the future of customer experiences are not, in fact, anywhere remotely close to understanding or behaving like their customers. And so that's the area of my work, is helping to understand how not only customers are changing, but also how to help executives connect in ways that they feel like they get it, rather than them reading about what customers are like, them feeling what customers are like, them being inspired by those differences and those disconnects. And that, if you might hear some noises in the background, what you're hearing are my daughters. Definitely.
Working from anywhere, success from anywhere, Brian.
Yeah, success from anywhere. And lastly, Leander, I know this is probably a longer answer to your question, but it's an important one. That we just finished some research in partnership with Harvard Business Review. And what we did find was that only 15% of companies all around the world are organized in a way where they have a single view of their customer and the operational capacity to make decisions in real time operationally around that data. So as you can see, there's a long way to go before we're truly seeing customer centricity.
So Brian, we talked about customer centricity there. I just want to dive in a little further into service. I heard you sort of dance around that. Is service the way to get closer to that customer, especially if you've got executives that aren't so close to it, they don't know what's going on the ground?
I think service is a powerful opportunity to get closer to customers. If you think about it, it is the oftentimes I'll say, the weakest link in the customer journey. When someone needs help or someone needs support, you will never hear the words, I love contacting customer service from a customer. Yeah, it builds anxiety, the anticipation of stress. They have to make time for it. And if you think about it, it's almost unreal that's accepted as an experience. But I think, if anything, that service is an opportunity to translate those vulnerable experiences into something great, especially when people aren't expecting it. And some of the best companies in the world have used service as a competitive advantage, have used great service as a form of marketing to just say, basically, hey, you can't get it anywhere else, but you can get it here. So if we just break down the word service, which I'm a big believer in taking some of these words and just kind of adding the magic back into them. Service means to serve, to help, to advise. And if you think about it, it's a gift. We have a customer who's in need of attention. And if we can deliver that, then they would feel a sense of reciprocity. And that reciprocity is then exercised in loyalty, or the form of an additional purchase down the road, or a referral. And these are all wonderful things. So I think that service is the next step towards bringing that customer unified approach to business back into the mix, back into the days before we had, if you think about it, maybe it's a bit ironic, technology scaling us away from customers can now actually bring us closer to customers, to help us build relationships with customers and make service not just a vulnerable moment in the journey, but actually a moment to get closer to people in time of need.
I really like that concept of adding magic back into the experience. It almost sounds Disney-like, which, usually remembers good memories, right, for most people. But you also said something else, make time for it, which is kind of true, right? In this day and age, when you do have an element where you want to reach out to a business, the concept, especially in this digital world, is you feel like you should be able to do it at any time, right? Any time that is available. How can you reimagine that, when you mentioned digital was one way to do it, but you want to have that human connection? How can you offer that in this world?
I think it's a matter of intention. Business as a construct needs a Control-Alt-Delete moment. And I think that this disruption is that moment, meaning that we've had to transcend traditional business into digital first worlds, work from anywhere worlds, learn from anywhere, be entertained from anywhere, connect from anywhere. And now that means it isn't just about facilitating the digitization of old processes and hoping that our old business or old service models are going to cut it now with a digital facade in a new world. In reality, if the goal is to drive growth through better products, better services, better customer experiences, then everything can be reimagined. And service itself, if we think about how we measure service, time to resolution, how many clicks to an outcome, we're sort of measuring the very things that prevent us from getting closer to customers. And that's never good. But if we were to start to measure things like satisfaction, lifetime value, contentment, how did you feel? How do you feel? By next steps, these types of things would allow us to design better service standards, but also driven by new, more human-centered service metrics.
It's a really interesting topic. I think, do you see those metrics that you mentioned, they're probably not the common ones that most service departments have. I think they're usually around reducing the time for the business to answer a call, or reducing the amount of people that it requires. Is this going to require a pretty big reset?
Yes, only because of the mindsets of those executives who are running the show today. Today's service is a cost center. And that technology has historically, and by historically, I mean, since the 1960s, has been used to scale that moment to facilitate more automated outcomes. Think about IVRs, think about remote contact centers, uh, chatbots today. They're largely used to deliver previous experiences that I don't know anybody would write home about. I just talked to a great chatbot today, or I was greeted by a great system where I couldn't hit zero and talk to a human being, or to say representative and talk to a human being. If anything, there's just usually points of frustration, and I think we let businesses get away with it for far too long. And now that I think customers have more of a powerful voice, and that voice is being exercised through their digital adoption, their digital transformation, where all around the world, data shows that customers have started to try new brands, try new experiences, exhibit new behaviors, that next wave of disruption is happening because people are finding better experiences because companies are giving them better experiences. So if we want to become truly customer centered, then that means that we have to maybe start thinking like the customer and start feeling like the customer wants to feel, and looking for ways to fix what's broken, and then to also innovate to deliver something new that we might not have otherwise thought of before the pandemic.
So Brian, tell me, you talk a lot about these themes with our customers. What's the genesis? Have you been doing research in this area? Is it a personal passion? Give us a little bit of a background where this all sort of started for you.
Yeah, it's a personal passion, I would say. And it's a passion to, look, I'd like to think I'm a human being. And I've certainly had my fair share of frustrations. And, when you look at why businesses are disrupted, when you look at where companies innovate, having done this for a really long time, it isn't, you don't have to be Steve Jobs or Elon Musk to actually build a better business. I mean, certainly it doesn't hurt, but the magic that we talked about earlier was really finding ways to deliver value to a customer. And at the end of the day, that's all innovation really is creating new value. That could be through technology, but it also could be through better service. It could be through a better script. It could be through, say, programming a chatbot, not by a decision tree, but through a conversation, which is where the power of conversational AI comes in, for example. It's all about intention. And that inspiration to humanize these types of business experiences has helped create a lot of really wonderful startups that I've had the opportunity to work with. And now, since I know it can be done, my passion is helping companies find ways to not be that next line item on a long list of companies that didn't survive the next wave of disruption.
Now tell me, without giving away too many secrets of those startups you've worked with, big companies you've worked with, what are some examples of companies that are doing this and getting it right?
Well, I think that what they all share is the desire to deliver a better experience. And like service, the word experience could use us getting to the heart of the matter, which is honestly an emotional reaction to a moment. And that emotional reaction is, if it's exceptional, you're going to remember it. And that is where most businesses make their mistake. They either deliver bad experiences, which is why customer service is such an Achilles heel today, or they deliver mediocre experiences, thinking that it just checks the box. We facilitated that transaction, great, but it's not exceptional, so therefore it doesn't stand out in the customer's mind. So to deliver an exceptional experience, we have to design for an exceptional experience. And that experience then means, how can we make someone feel something that becomes a memory that is so great that they desire to have it again, or that they feel fondness towards our organization or to our brand. And I don't think we do that today. We certainly have branding and marketing and a brand style guide, but we don't have an experience style guide. And I think service is a very powerful way to do that. So those companies that have a customer service style guide, if you will, or a manual or a playbook, companies like Zappos, or companies like Apple, or companies like Southwest Airlines, or JetBlue in the States. These are companies that have decided they were going to build their competitive differentiator around exceptional customer service. And could it always be better? Sure. The customer is always changing and evolving, and their standards for service are being enhanced, especially during these times. But it's that intention and that desire to want to serve that I think is really what counts. And it's about the entire journey and reminding people of how valuable they are to the organization, to your brand, as part of the community. That service is not a department; it's a mantra. It's a gift.
It's interesting. Sometimes I like to simplify the world a little bit. And when you think about it, companies are really like human beings, right? If you put the whole company as a human, you would want to remember your experience with that person, right? And it's usually an emotion, like you said, a response. So I love that concept. I guess the question that many folks tuning in might be thinking, well, who owns this?
Well, it's a bit of the Wild West. And I don't see that as a bad thing at all. It is because what we're really talking about, Leandro, is what is the business model that's necessary to succeed and to compete in this next generation of a post-pandemic economy? Instead, many conversations are, how do we get back to a new normal? How do we adapt what we did for this new world? And I get it, but it's really a mindset. And I'm gonna introduce two concepts, and then I'll answer your question, which is iteration and innovation. And a lot of times companies invest in iteration because it looks a lot like innovation. We've adopted AI. We've adopted automation and RPA. We've adopted data analytics, and we have visualizations of those data sets, and it's incredible. But ultimately, iteration is doing anything, using new technologies, new processes, new mindsets to do what you did yesterday better tomorrow at scale, greater efficiency, whatever it is that you measure. And we need to do that. But innovation is creating new value, net new value that didn't exist yesterday, using those same tools, mindsets, processes. And I believe that companies moving forward need to think about both in a parallel track. So who owns that? Who's the orchestrator or who's the conductor? That is coming through, in some cases of companies I'm working with, the CMO is becoming a steward of CX, but partnering with functional leaders so that it's not, I own this, it's, I'll be accountable, but let's move it together. In other cases, it's a chief customer officer. In other cases, it's a chief digital or a chief experience officer. Ultimately, I think it's anybody who cares about the customer, cares about that customer experience, and has the capacity within the organization to bring people together to navigate the difficult world of politics and egos and fear, to do what's right in the world. And that what's right in the world isn't to deliver value all the time just to shareholders and stakeholders, but to deliver that value to them because you delivered greater value to customers and we grew the right way.
So everything I'm hearing here, Brian, it seems like it's ripe for the CEO to get involved, right? Or at least to care about. Surely without them trying to bring the organization along, this can't happen.
I'd like to think so, that the CEO ultimately becomes the steward for this transformation. It's not just about customer centricity, it's also about employee experience. It's also about innovation. And all of these things are different than the way we used to work yesterday. And so I think employees are going to feel this need of safety, this need of empowerment. And ultimately, those are aspects of a culture that is a culture of innovation, a culture of empowerment, a culture of customer centricity. And the CEO is the only one who could own that. And if you look at any number of reports, for example, there's a CEO study published by a group called Gaping Void that focuses on culture science. They found that companies with a purposeful culture have outperformed all of their peers. Some of the companies that we talked about earlier, Apple, Zappos, Southwest Airlines, they are all also known not just of companies with great service, but also companies with great cultures.
So Brian, we've talked about a lot of things today. For folks listening in, executives, maybe the CEOs listening in as well, what's a practical step that they can take today or this week to get started on this journey?
I think a practical step is to have the undercover boss moment. Look, in all reality, and I say this with sincerity, that we're not our customers. You know, we show up to work. We make decisions based on, when when in between meetings, when we're catching up after our inboxes, and it makes it really difficult to have that empathy that's really required to feel your customer, to know their aspirations, to know a day in the life of the experiences they value, regardless of whether or not it's in your industry. And so the advice that I would give is to become your customer, to reverse mentor in some way, shape, or form with an employee, with a customer who lives life differently than you, so that you can understand that just because we don't know them doesn't mean that we can operate moving forward, being apart from them. And I guess that's really that undercover boss moment where, in like the TV show, when a decision maker or an executive has to go through a day in the life of what it's like to be an employee or what it's like to be a customer, they change. Every ending of the episode is the same, but it's always wonderful, which is promises of a new way of working, accolades to people, being a customer and employee-centered leader. It's just a wonderful human-centered opportunity, I think, to get back in touch with the customer and who the customer and the employee are becoming.
Truly, truly sage advice. I guess if I was to summarize some of the topics that I took away was, we started with the concept of customer centricity, but that it will be a competitive advantage in the future, right? We have the opportunity to rewrite many businesses here. And a key being, how do you create that emotional reaction from all the moments, right? The moments that matter, not just the sale, not just the transaction. I loved this concept of not just iteration, but also innovation. I think without both, we will just be translating the old model, the analog model, potentially. It is going to require cross-functional approach, so it isn't just one department. We touched in the service department, and of course, they have a key role, but it will take more. And the role of the CEO, and really making this a whole of organizational change. And maybe a recommendation is to go and watch Undercover Boss if you haven't seen that, Brian. Always a pleasure. Thank you so much for your time. And I hope everyone appreciated the session, and hope to talk to you soon.
Well, thank you. It's absolutely my pleasure. And let's do this weekly, shall we?
Let's do it. Let's lock it in the diaries. Some really incredible conversations we're having in this series. If you want to learn more about these topics or watch more episodes, visit sfdc.co/conversations. So far, we've covered, amongst other things, customer loyalty as the new currency, inclusivity and collaboration in our new world, effective decision-making, and today we had a fascinating look into the key to humanizing technology and achieving customer centricity. Thank you for tuning into our executive conversations. See you next time. Brian, if you want to do any interpretive dance, or this is your chance for 15 minutes here that...
I don't have those skills. I'm not going to do that to you. Now, if there are any Eddie Murphy fans out there, I can do some clapping and Hercules.
Oh, okay, now we're going to turn this into a... You know what? This could be a cool idea. Book reading from Brian Solis. You've got the pensive look. I know you love that on social. Yeah, there you go. The upper eyebrow.